Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Next Perfect Step, where all possibilities lie in conversation. I'm your co-host, Laurie Mullen.
And I'm your co-host, Laurie Tremblay. We're so happy to have you join us today on the Next Perfect Step. And we have a very special guest, which is Martina Cyr. She is my art teacher. I've just started taking lessons recently, acquainting myself with my love for art. And I'm so happy I found Martina. She is an artist, designer, and maker working in Brookfield, New Hampshire. And she has a beautiful studio on the lake. Martina has her degrees in illustration and design from Boston and Cambridge, as well as her teaching certification. Martina specializes in mixed media pieces that bring emotional content and connection to the viewer. They're hoping to generate awareness about our similarities and not our differences. So Martina works in her studio in Brookfield and runs private instruction, workshops, and also teaches regularly at the nonprofit Makers Mill in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, where I've taken classes. So we extend a warm welcome to you, Martina. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So we'd just like to hear about your work, kind of
Sure.
how you got started. I've enjoyed your classes so much. You're an excellent teacher. You're very inspiring. And I had a chance to go to your art exhibit that's going on right now. So just could share with us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So, do you want me to share a little bit about how I got started in art and why I create?
Yes,
Um,
please.
okay, so art has always been my happy place to play and explore and do something for myself since I was a little girl. And as I grew up and decided, what I wanted to do for a profession, it was definitely a controversy in my family. My father especially was not supportive of me going into fine arts, felt I could not earn a living, and wanted me to go into business. I actually have my degree in business as well, but I got that after I got my degree in illustration and design, which has helped me. And I had a lot of companies pay for it. That was always my joke, that all these different companies ended up paying for courses throughout my career. It is hard making a living as a creative person, as many of us know. But they're also, I always share with, especially young people, I supported my family doing product design in apparel and footwear in large corporations and then consulting. And I always remind young people that everything has been designed or created by someone, even a coffee maker. And that if you're passionate about creating, that you can make a living doing something you love. So I got my degree in illustration from Mass College of Art and Design in Boston, which was nothing special at the time, but is now fairly well known and renowned. And then I went and got a design certification through Nova Scotia College of Art and Design in Halifax, and then landed a job drawing footwear, just randomly was posted, but it was a way to get paid to draw. And that led to a whole new career for me, which was the footwear and apparel industry, which started in New England. And almost every large manufacturer of footwear, because of all the mills in New England, is in New England. And at the time, what they did is they stole you from one company to another. They would literally call you and say, "Oh, I hear you're designing for so and so. Would you like to come to us and make more money and get a bump in your title?" And that was the way it went. And they knew who was designing what. And as you designed better product, you had a reputation in the industry as well as in the factories. And so I started traveling in my 20s overseas as a young working mom, going to very poor areas in Asia where they were manufacturing. And I had lots of great breaks. I just happened to be at the right company when they were booming. It was just circumstance. I know I was hardworking and perhaps I was skilled, but I also just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And I also had many female role models of other young working women and moms that were in the same spot that gave me an opportunity to go to the factories. And as soon as I went to the factories, I gained so much skill and knowledge and teamed with other young women that were working um, and and got a good reputation for making product that sold. So I'm both a creative artist, but I'm also supported my family through product design. And that I think that shaped me a lot. A lot of my work is about recognizing that we're all the same, which is part of the exhibit you went to, Laurie. And I think when I was in my 20s as a young mom working professionally, I saw that I was feeling sad and for myself that I was away from my family for usually 2 weeks at a time. And the other moms were gone for 6 weeks or 6 months from their children. And so it really reminded me that where you're born makes a difference on how your life path is, because I was American, and because I was American, I had all these opportunities that they didn't have. So it was just, I think that had shaped me the most. And it was always very rural, poor areas. I was not a tourist. I was not in any glamorous setting. I was in a factory working alongside a teammate. So I think that that has shaped me in wanting to create art that connects people. I think that's why I care so much about, and mothers and babies and children are very important to me, and women. Are we having trouble with the audio? I feel like you're looking.
No, that's,
Okay,
I
good.
can hear you perfectly. No, that's,
Okay, good. I know that was a long answer, but it we all get shaped by different things, and I got shaped by my experience in my 20s, which lasted a long time. I've traveled overseas to factories, I think 20, 25 years, and always typically, and also being typically the only female in my corporate setting, or at least a female that had some type of responsibility, power, impact. And so I always use my own creating as my time for peace and something I do for myself. And I think it's important for people to create, and also ideally to show for me anyway, to show connection and positivity in art. So that's really my backstory, is why do I care about doing what I do? And it's because I went out into the world and saw what gifts I had just because I was white and because I was born in the USA, you know, and it really shaped me.
I can see how that would shape you. I mean, that's a powerful story. Is being how did people react to you being there with them as an American?
Well, I mean, the women and the humanity and the connection was immediate. These women were equally or as skilled as I was, and we had very little language sometimes. But when you're making something, I mean, I really say I'm a maker above all else. I mean, the designer, all that just sounds fancy, but really, I love making things that I can see, and I create because I have an idea and I'm curious and I want to see it, and that's all for me. And I could choose. I would say I could choose to get really great at one thing and paint like the Gloucester Harbor or Bar Harbor again and again and again, and probably make a good living. And there's nothing wrong with people who do that, but that's not who I am. I really get ideas all the time. And I want to see them, and I want to connect with the materials, and I want to see what happens. And you talk about flow in creating, and I believe that I have planning and intention, and I do a lot to get started. And most of it is thinking. And I always share with my students that observing and looking is more important than actually the making. And then when you are in it with your idea and you're creating, there is a flow piece where you and the piece are together, as corny as that sounds, and your piece is kind of dictating where you're going. So you can prepare, and you need to prepare, and you need to think, and you need to have a direction. But then once the piece evolves, the really great work happens when you're so into it that your piece is dictating where you're going. You and the piece are kind of one, as corny as that sounds. So I guess I learned early on that that's what I have to do. It's like something I have to do. I have to go make to be content. And these women in Asia where I started, it was very easy to say, I'm thinking about this, and they might not even understand the language, and they would talk back to me in Taiwanese or Chinese, or I went to Vietnam and all this, but because they could see what I'm trying to go with, and we could draw together. And then they would also respond from a making standpoint, like, I know where you're going with this, but we can't do this, or this material won't work, or, once we get to manufacturing, this can't happen. There was a great relationship of teamwork between mostly women. And I think, coming from the United States, and I won't get off track, I worked at like Timberland and Patagonia and all these corporations, and I was typically either the only female or the most senior female in a meeting. And, I really lived that concept of discrimination and glass ceiling, and was really awful. And in Asia, a female is usually the person that negotiates and is the leader. Like, they recognize that the female is actually the one that can bring home the decision. And for sure, when you're in a factory as a designer, when you're filling their factory with money, and it's not you, it's not me, I would just be the person bringing the idea. They could see me drawing it and then making it. So I got all the credit for giving them the money, filling their factory with something that sold, which is not, not fair, because there were many people and many pieces to making that happen. But there was great respect and kindness, because they recognized that you were the reason they all had jobs, and also, if you weren't good at it, you right away fell. So it was really crazy in that, like when I went from Timberland to Rockport to Stride Right, like they would steal you and say, oh, she's doing a good job. Let's steal her from place to place. And if you had the reputation that you were good, you would get another job. And also, if you had the reputation, as I found out early on, as a designer, especially that label as a designer, if you don't have the reputation, you're out right away. Like, they never think sales or manufacturing. They don't ever think, what were all the components, why this product didn't sell? And that's a universal thought in anything, whether you're designing washing machines or a jacket, it's all the same. The designer's kind of like that person that has a reputation and is credited for all the good and also all the bad. So so quickly, when I was doing very well from a reputation standpoint, I made a strategy to get out and become a consultant. And that's what I did. So I left, and when I had like all my ducks in a row, and became a consultant. And all throughout this process, since I was 25 or 26, whenever I had time or made time, I created large scale paintings, anything. And that's kind of been my whole life. Like, I've always said, okay, this is the thing I have to do to put food on the table. And this is the thing I have to do to sustain my joy. And they're not the same. They're not the same. So, like when I had my art student yesterday, I mean, I had such moments of joy that are just completely different than if I'm doing a paid job well. Or yesterday or this weekend, and Laurie, you were in that class, there was one moment when I was looking at everyone drawing, and everyone was doing what I'd asked them to do, was citing with the pencil, and everybody was into their work, and I had immense joy. Like, it's not like another joy. When I can see people moving forward on creating, it's great joy for me. So I try to keep that always.
That's so beautiful. And Laurie and I speak about that a lot, about finding your joy, finding your passion, whatever it is. And that's the place that you soar and you're like, it's like jumping into a river and going swimming down that river. Just, finding your flow. Like you were talking about the synchronicities that happens when you're in your joy too. And that happens when you're finding your space and where your path is supposed to be leading. Just doors will be opening for you, and that's what happened. Seems like that's what happened with you and led you to where you are now.
Yeah, I do believe I one of my biggest commitments in teaching is that I it's a myth that you are artistic or not, and that it gets passed down from some great. I feel very passionate about that. That's not a truth. You can be mentored, you can be inspired, you can be encouraged, but everyone can create or make, and everyone from the beginning of time in every culture from their birth has wanted to make. And so I feel very strongly, just like when you see that 11-year-old girl saying, I'm not good at math. And you want to say, oh, wow, girl, like who told you that? And you need to be good at math because we all need to know our finances and you need to pay your bills. And please let me share with you that you are good at with math. And I feel the same with art. And, I think that's why I teach. That's a big reason I teach. And that's why I teach not only with learning skills or best practices, which for sure are very important, that because if anybody's good at anything because they put in so much time, if they can share those little tidbits they've learned over hours of doing something, then everyone moves forward much faster. So it's that, but it's also getting that person to believe that they can do anything they want if they practice and they have best practices. And I feel very strongly about that. And that no one is born to make or not make. We all can make. And we are all creative. And if everybody would just look at every culture from the beginning of time, everyone has that need to make everywhere in the world at all time. And if you would just look at your childlike self, that playing is when you learn, that exploring. And if you can stay curious and wonder and not get your head involved with you labeling yourself that you're good or bad at anything. And that's why I know, and Laurie, you have heard me in classes, I always say, well, how long have you been doing this? How can you possibly be good at it? And I hear that person go, well, I'm not good at this, or I'm not creative, or I'm not artistic. And you just want to, and I just say, really? Well, how often have you done this before? And they go, never, or whatever. And I'm like, well, why are you setting, I use the baking or cooking analogy because early on, I have 5 kids. I was like, wow, I put dinner on the table for all those years. I'm so not interested. I'm like, I say, so I'm not trying is my point. I'm not trying to be great at cooking or baking. I'm not putting in the hours. Why? Because when I have free time, I want to create artistically. And so I'm not great at it because I'm not putting in the time. And everyone else creating has to say that to themselves. Like, how much time are you spending trying to do this for yourself? Um, Give yourself the grace to say, I'm choosing not to be great at this right now, instead of I'm not great at this. So I think that's really important in any routine that we're trying to get in life. You have to say, I'm trying to change a habit. I have to give myself grace and go slow until that habit becomes a new habit, right?
Great perspective. Great
Yeah.
nice. I was thinking today, when I was a girl, I loved to, like, I made it's for everybody. I was always making, I was always drawing, I was always doing something. And then I think if you return to what makes you so happy and just explore that again, make that spark come alive, then that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm getting back into the things I'd love to do as a girl, but
Oh,
it's a
good.
different perspective, and I have a different viewpoint of it, but it still gives me joy and happiness. So, yeah.
That's great. That's really good you're doing that, because and I believe that the stress is also, as we get older, a big component to our overall health, not just our bodies aging. And so I think that is why a lot of people return to creating as they finally have free time. And, I've realized too with creating that the superpower, I feel like we all have superpowers, those special things that are fortunate that we have. And I know for me, I'm not an end result person. And I've learned quickly that is my superpower because and if we could all do that more, then you keep going back and trying. And every time you try, you learn. So it's like this great cycle where if you can allow yourself to be lost in the joy of playing and not whatever you make and look at what you made, and definitely don't look at what you made compared to others. And if you can recognize that you're practicing and playing, and that's why it's not exactly where you want it to be because you're not an expert there, then you keep going. And the more you keep going, you actually get better. Your hand remembers, your mind remembers. I mean, I am a mixed media artist and I'm pretty good at everything and not an expert at anything. And that's because I keep being curious about the next thing. But everything you learn and the joy you get from creating, if you remember that, which you will, your body remembers it, then you'll try something else and you get braver, you get more curious, you wonder more, you allow yourself to explore, and you're investing. I mean, that's what I say. You're investing in yourself every time you make. Your body and your hand will remember and it will apply to something completely different. So if I take up welding this afternoon and I've never done welding, everything I've done in painting, drawing, anything will give me something to be better at welding. And if people can just remember that and not put themselves in a narrow path, then they will get the joy and they will get better. And all you really need is a lot of best practices from somebody who's done it a lot to move you along faster or give you more confidence, or that support to say, you're doing great. Look at what you just did. Did you do this last week? It's that kind of thing. I was doing that with one of my students yesterday and because she was not happy with the end result, which is all of us. We look and we go, oh, what did I just spend my time on? Instead of saying, you just invested in something for yourself. You're with yourself at the end of the day. That's who you've got. So if you made yourself happy and you gave yourself something where you moved forward, isn't that what you should be doing? Like if people could just see that as growth from themselves instead of, I think arts or craft, especially craft, that word, doodling versus drawing. I mean, it's viewed as a non-productive, selfish, not financially important thing. And that stigmatism should go away because it's a negative. I always feel like when I hear somebody say they're doodling, I'm saying, you're drawing, right? Like it's a better term, or I'm just crafty. You're making, you're creating, good for you. So I think, and that goes all the way, for me, it goes all the way back to my father saying, you're smart. Don't waste your time going into fine arts, to the point where he said, I'm not going to support you at all financially or emotionally if you go into fine arts. And so, of course, I did. I was like, really? Well, then I definitely am. But, and I always joke too. I mean, the downside is, it's not like as you age, you can decide to become a brain surgeon. But as you age, you can become an artist, and so there is this view that it's frivolous or selfish or not productive or, and so I think my long-winded comment is, part of why I teach is to give that support to people to say, yeah, it's worthwhile. You have to choose to make it worthwhile for yourself. You deserve it. You deserve to be happy. Go, go make something, So anyway,
I love that. And I really believe like joy is a way of being. And it's a feeling. And passion is joy in action, joy in movement. And
yeah.
if you loved cooking as a child and it doesn't bring you that passion and joy anymore, the honesty with yourself to find that feeling in something else that you do enjoy now. It's that feeling as a child that I don't care if I'm good at it or not. I like doing it. So I'm going to go do cartwheels, It's finding that feeling again and being honest with yourself. Like you don't have to force joy and passion. Find your joy and passion and follow it.
Yeah, no, I love how you said that. And that ties in with that word of playing. And that idea that child is happy just exploring and trying and playing, right? So I think that's that big release with making is you figured something out and you tried something and you were curious, that curiosity or wonder. And yeah, that is the gift about aging. I think as you get older, you realize, like me saying, you know what? I put meals on the table for this many years. It gives me absolutely no joy. Give me a yogurt and banana. I'm too busy. I want to make something, but so and that feels great. That part of getting older is the great part, the wisdom, I've got a funny quick sideline story that you'll both laugh at. I was at this party and my neighbor who's 90 said, Martina, I'm going to get going. I'm cold. And because we were out on a patio and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I've got a jacket in my car. And she said, I'm lying. I just want to leave. And what was important to me about the story was just her ability to be so honest. Like at 90, she was like, I don't care about making anybody feel good. I'm going to just do what I want and say what I want. And that's the other gift as well, I think, as you get older,
That's great.
Yeah, isn't it great? No, I'm lying.
It's a freeing. It's to be that just brutally honest with yourself.
Yes, exactly. I know.
It's like you just pushed off all the layers of what you're supposed to say or how you're supposed to feel or who cares what you're saying or doing. It's freeing. It's a really freeing feeling to be that just honest with yourself.
Yeah, I loved it. It's a quick little story, but it still brings me joy all the time. So anyway, what I know I'm going all over the place. You can tell I have a lot to say about my work. Is there anything I can be quiet? Is there something either one of you want to ask me or I can help share with your audience?
Would you like to show us your studio? You were showing
Sure. Okay, so we have an open concept camp that we remodeled and continue. Both Brian, my husband, is an industrial designer and also went to the same art school I went to, even though we never met. We always joke that he went after the money because he's an industrial designer and a graphic designer, and I was the fine artist that was like, I don't need money. But so together we found this camp on the water. I'm a big swimmer, and the water is where I go for peace. And it's on a non-public access lake. And I've recreated my studio many, many times. I don't know if you can you see it okay? Both of you? Can you see it, Laurie?
Yes. Can you lower it a little bit? So we can.
There you go. Yeah.
So I built this table that looks out on the water where I can stand. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And I built a bookshelf that acts as a wall that people think I'm not here, which is great. And I just have a big studio table. I have a magnetic wall that I use magnetic paint, and I put up all my ideas when I'm working on the wall. And I have a big printmaking table from a friend of mine that was a printmaker. So I have a big space, and I have all my supplies everywhere organized by color, because I made my living with color financially. And so I get great joy out of having everything organized by color. Makes me very happy. I call it delicious when my supplies are all together. And then my whole home is very bright and colorful. I don't know if you can see any of it, but I have white walls and I have all my paintings up everywhere. That's the other good thing about me that I realized early on, that I don't really care what people think about my art as far as like, is it good enough to put up? I just, once it's done and I'm happy enough with the flow, I'm done with it and I'm good to put it up, and I just have a good feeling about it. I don't really judge it like, I mean, for sure, I can go to any painting in my home or in a gallery or wherever and say, I really didn't like what happened here, or I wish I could redo this, but I can't. But I also am like, well, on to the next thing. One of my greatest joys that I care about is last year I was chosen to do all the artwork for Hope on Haven Hill, which is a women's shelter. It's actually it's for women with substance abuse moms. And being a mom is very important to me. Being a mom is one of my identities, having so many children. I filled their whole new space in Rochester where they're doing training with mother and baby scenes and pregnant women images. And it was a big deal for me and very, very satisfying because I really cared about doing it. And it was a crazy timeline. And it was a brand new space. And it was so much art. I had to create so much art in so little time. But it was a perfect fit for me because it was about women who don't have the same opportunities as I do, which I care about very much. And creating positive imagery in a space where women were working. So Hope on Haven Hill started in Somersworth. And then they have a brand new, beautiful building in Rochester where they do all their training as well as bringing the women in, the moms. And they have like a yoga center down there now and a gym. And they have a resale shop for them where they can just come in and buy clothing, not buy clothing, but actually get clothing for themselves or babies. But that was a big deal. That was the biggest push I've ever had, where I chose to give them art for all that space. And that also I know it was just a gift where I'd just been connecting with this one woman over time. And I think I did a donation piece once when they did a fundraiser, and somehow it evolved, and it was crazy. I have images where I took over the entire house. My entire house was filled like with one painting going on over here and one alcohol thing in the kitchen. The whole house had things going on at the same time for about 4 to 5 months just to get it ready for the opening. But it was a really happy, positive experience for me that felt like just the perfect fit because, being a mom or being pregnant, having babies, what I shared with you at the beginning about dealing with other women. These other women in Asia normally left their children for 6 months. So here I was having a pity party for myself that I was leaving my children for 12 to 14 days. And they'd be like, yeah, my mother's taking care of my children because I have to work in China now. And I'd be like, okay. Or at the beginning, I also had the teammate that said, man or woman, we're only allowed one child. And here I am with multiple children, right? So I think for me, what I care most about is the women and babies and the idea that we're all just trying to take care of our people, whether we have babies or not. And we're all the same. No one's any different. Wherever you meet anybody, they're all just trying to take care of their people. They just and hope that they're happy themselves, and that's it. And we didn't even talk about the race study, but when I drew during the pandemic, and I don't know if we have time, I can talk about it or not. So during the pandemic, which was so scary for all of us, I still feel like people are still have challenges from that, especially little people, poor little people, and young people. Like our son had to move home from Spain because he was in jeopardy, like he had to get home, like, and he lost out on having a college experience because of it, which was also common. But anyway, I decided that I would draw and to try to get through, because there was like no work with students and things like that. And I recognized that in all, and I've been drawing since I was little. Like I have that skill. I put in a lot of hours to draw. My hand knows how to do it, and my eyes know how to see it. And all my books. And so it started with me trying to draw an African American woman. Man, I did not know how to do that well. And once I researched it with all my art books, which I have so many over the years, no one was showing me how to draw an African American woman. So then I got on the web and no information, nothing. So it became like this quest of like, and then I got upset about it that here I am, this entitled white person, and it keeps passing from generation to generation, that I had an advantage being middle class or being born in the United States, and yet nothing around me gave me any technical information on how to draw of somebody from a different race. And then the more I researched, the more I realized it was everything and everybody. So I found this one study where a photographer had taken a person from everywhere in the world and compared them from a photograph. And I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick a young woman because I'm a woman, that's how I identify. And I tried to get them in the same size format and train myself how to draw somebody from every place in the world. And I wrote, because I also was uneducated. It was very sad that here I was educated, but didn't know what's their religion. What do they eat for breakfast? What do they wear for clothing? What are their challenges? What's their income level? And I just started, just from my own knowledge base, researching all these young women, like these young people, just to give myself like a goal for educating myself and becoming better at my craft. And it was so enlightening because it is absolutely about mark making, that where your marks are determine where someone thinks you're from. And it is a nuance. It is the slightest change in your pencil or how we see with our eyes. And there were so many crossovers about like the width of somebody's face from Native American to a Korean woman, the shape of people's cheeks, the fact that our eyelids and the lack of that fold makes someone Asian, the size of your nostrils. It was just fascinating to me. As well as what that person typically wears for ornamentation. I did a whole study on women and what they put on their heads, because I thought, wow, if I put, this type of a hat on a woman, I bet I'm thinking she's Southern. Even just like nuances within our own country, or a sari, or, like, what do we think when we see someone like that? And just, we all are racist because we've all come from someone who's had some lack of openness, and also just style wise, how we think somebody's a certain way, that when we don't know someone, like, that's just inherent to being human. And it was just very interesting for myself. And it is one of my big goals. My hope is that if I do anything with art where I can influence people, which is the big wish, it's to get people to realize that everyone really is the same and not different. And I feel like our world has really become, the United States, really, people are not coming together as a community of people, whatever your religious or political beliefs are. And it's very sad and scary. And then the greater world is also scary because of religious beliefs and people just not being open. And I feel like art should make people open. And I guess my favorite thing about art is that you're not talking at anyone. Your person is coming to see something and interpret it their own way with their own past and belief systems. It's not confrontational. I think creative imagery has the ability to communicate with another person without being confrontational. And so I think that's the biggest gift about art. If you can create art that gets people to, on their own, in their own timeline, in their own history and way, to reflect in a positive way, I think that then if it gives you joy in making that, and then that person receives that in a positive way and becomes more open, I think that's the big lofty goal. I think for me, that's, like even with Hope on Haven Hill, if I made very large scale pregnant bellies that had hearts around the pregnant belly with their hands. And if that young pregnant woman who's, struggling sees a beautiful image of the love coming inside her belly, if ideally she feels more positive or hopeful, then my time has been well spent. I mean, that's, I guess, how I see it. If a piece of art or making can make you happy or more thoughtful or hopeful or positive, then that's that's where you should land. Like that's, and then I guess even for yourself, if you are happier and therefore are kinder or happier or nicer to someone else, then isn't that a good use of your time? Like I wish people would look at creating that way, that you go out into the world happier, you're going to make someone else happier.
Absolutely. Really, what you've done with your art, when I saw your exhibit, it really touched me. And I just looked at the faces that you drew in your notes. You had this big notebook with all your notes from your research, and then going around and seeing the women on the wall. I absorbed it, and it just really touched my heart. And then you're hearing about your project with Hope on Haven Hill is amazing. Think of all the lives you touched there with your gift of love and compassion, and you're spreading this message from your heart, and it's touching people. And like you said, they'll pass it on, and it means something to them too.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope so. I think everybody, even somebody who's working, 8 to 6 and not doing something amazing or creative or whatever, they're still hoping for all the same stuff. They're just hoping that their people are okay. They're hoping that they're okay. It's not any different. And I think especially with the election next week, whatever side you're on, people are stressed. And it's going to be bad. Like, it's not like it's going to get solved next week. And, I'm feeling it for everyone as well as myself. And it's because we're so divided, and people are not coming together on some basic things. And, I'm hoping, and I think that's why public art and outdoor art and murals and all that are also so important, because you can really affect a lot of people with positive imagery in the world. And also, it's what I said before. The gift of art is that I'm not trying to talk at you or convince you about anything. You are coming to the art on your own and taking whatever you want from it. And I think, I don't know another way to reach people that's that, it's so non-confrontational, and it's so about the viewer. It's really a gift you're giving to someone else on their terms. And how else can you can read something. That's also a great way to connect for yourself and take what you want. But that's what I think the big gift is about art. I think art has a way of giving that person whatever they're looking for. Right? So, yeah, I really respect it that way. And let alone what it's doing for the person. I mean, I feel like for the most part, and I teach children too, if I can get them making more, because I'm giving them also technique. And so they feel happier. And that's an adult too. If that person's creating more, I know I'm helping them be happy. and I do believe it's goes and goes. Like if you're happier, you're going to be more tolerant and nicer to the next person, you know.
Absolutely.
And I guess, I have that quality too. I'm very naive. I call myself Pippi Longstocking, if you're old enough to remember her. But she was like, I've never done this before. I bet I'll be great at it. And that's the other thing I really care about is girls. I care about, women and girls are we're not first. We are absolutely still discriminated against. And, heaven forbid, we're African American female. Like there's like a pecking order of not getting what everybody else gets. And so I really feel strongly about supporting girls, girls going into, professions that they haven't gone into or, believing they can do anything. I have that. My favorite piece is Brave Girl, where she's got boxing gloves and she's wearing the girliest outfit. And she's like, don't judge me because I'm wearing a girly outfit. I'm tough. I'm strong. I can do whatever I want. I had this one art image, which I still will do at some point, which is elderly women and being girly girls, like old women wearing tutus. Like I feel like every woman had, the crowns and the, like, so what, like I think it'd be fun. That's a whole nother thing I'm interested in is discrimination against elderly, and showing that we're all still the same based on age and stuff like that. So anyway, you can tell I have a lot to say about everything. But you're asking me about the one category that I really feel passionate about, which is, giving people a boost through making,
And that comes through in your classes and your conversation right now. So appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let our listeners know that you can find the art that Martina is talking about on her beautiful website, martinadesigns.com, right?
Yeah.
And you've got your artwork from the shows, and you can see Brave Girl, and you can see different works at her gallery on her website. So I would please go and look at that. It's just amazing.
Oh, and you can always connect with me. I answer everybody. I try. I always do actually because I care. So I just hope people are good to themselves and try to go out into the world and be a little bit more open about whatever your first impression or thought is of someone you're meeting and who they are. Because you never know, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. And do you have anything else to add or?
I just, no, I believe, I guess my other big thing that I love is the random acts of kindness. I think if you can be, especially to someone who's not expecting it, if you can be kind to someone that isn't expecting to hear from you or not on your to-do list in a small, tiny way, I absolutely believe that gives that person hope in humanity and they will pay it forward. I really do. And if we could all just do a little bit of that, I think everybody would have more tolerance and kindness to everybody else around. And I can't think of a more important time in our life than right now, like with what's going on. The fear, the worry, the stress, the feeling like we're not coming together, which we're not. We're very divided as a country. We're very divided as a world. And so beyond what needs to get done today, if everybody, and I try to do this, I'm not great all the time, but I try to do something kind for go a little bit further than what's necessary with someone who doesn't expect it. And I do believe it makes a huge impact on people's belief that things will work out. That I had somebody yesterday where I sang happy birthday to someone that I knew was their birthday who did not count on me at all. I was not one of their people. and I had the wrong number. And I got a text during work from somebody I don't know that said, "You sent me the most adorable," or whatever they said, something very sweet, the sweetest birthday song, but it's not me. But I thought to myself, that person took that extra step to tell me they don't know me. I don't know this person. So I went out of my way to thank them and also got back to the right person. But I feel like those little things go a long way in everybody believing that it'll be all right.
Yes.
You know, that's going to be okay, that people really are good and kind and are doing their best. And you never know somebody's story. You don't ever know what someone's going through. So if you can assume the best, stay open, and just do something very little for someone, go a little bit beyond. I think everybody will believe that it's going to be okay.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Right? I mean, I don't know. Because, they say that expression from Ted Lasso, it's the hope that kills you. And I feel just the opposite. It's the hope. Hope is the thing that gets you trying. I don't agree. Like hope is what gets you motivated. Like you got to believe that it's going to make a difference. Why not? I feel very strongly about that word. That's a word that really resonates with me. Words matter, and hope's one of them. I really think hope is a good word. I have rise in my studio is another word that I really care about. Rise. Lift yourself up, lift someone up. And so I think words, I know Laurie I wrote poems during the pandemic, which is not in my wheelhouse. But I felt very strongly about words as a way of connecting with a whole nother group of people. And I think that's important for people to just express themselves that way, to write. Writing is a great vehicle too.
Maybe a book is in your future.
I don't know, but me, Pippi and we're going to believe that whatever. Being naive is not always a bad thing. Keeps you trying.
It's the innocence.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely 6. My husband's always like, "You stayed 6, didn't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, it was great. Being 6 was great." So
thank you again so much.
Thank
Martina.
you.
Really.
That's great that you do this. That's really nice. It's a whole nother way to connect with people and on their terms, right? Just like we talked about, they can listen, they can get out of it what they want.
Right.
That's wonderful. You put the effort in, both of you, to do that.
Thank you. If you've been inspired by this episode as much as I have, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, how is your intuition leading you to the next perfect step?